there's a difference between how the IRGC operates versus the Central Bank of Iran, right? And last week's episode, we did touch on central bank independence and kind of your definition, your framework around that. And so, how does that apply to the comparisons there?
Yep. So, and we talked about central bank independence as a sliding scale, right? You can go from, let's say, 0 to 100. 100 implies that your central bank is not beholden to any external authority, whether it's public, private, et cetera, right? The European Central Bank is probably the closest thing to that. Dial that up to 100. The opposite of that would be if your central bank is just a bank that tucks into the existing kind of executive branch of government, or just the government itself, and is fully beholden to the public sector. So in the U.S., that would be like a Fed that is subordinate to the U.S. Treasury. It's not the way our system works. That's, we hear the kicking and screaming about that topic specifically in the media. We leave that aside. We'll probably be talking about that more and more in the coming weeks as the Warsh nomination comes up. But within the Iranian structure, the central bank is actually beholden to the government, the existing the civilian government, and reports to the executive branch, right? And so its mandate isn't really price stability, as you're seeing, like it prints $10 million real notes, right? So that's the like if you had a price stability mandate, that would be in conflict. Its mandate is really to fund the government, which is at the end of the day, every central bank's kind of backstop, or final mandate, right? Ensure the continuity and survival of government. So the central bank has to purchase Iranian government debt to fund its budget, which it comes up with through its own kind of legislative process. And so it's basically required, gun to its head, to fund everything the government needs to purchase that it says it requires to wage this, it would argue, a defensive war, right? Against a foreign hostile takeover, as in all wars, like there's nuance, and both sides have a perspective here, right? So Central Bank of Iran, fully subordinate to that. It's a civilian government branch, but where the rubber kind of practically meets the road in the real economy, right? We've talked about how the IRGC has slowly over the decades just amassed ownership of all of these key entities in the Iranian economy. It's oil and gas, the pipeline infrastructure, cybersecurity, construction and infrastructure development. Like it's your only game in town, and it has exclusivity essentially. It's got no big contracts, all of that stuff. So what it's actually doing is funding this IRGC private equity, private military war machine, right? And it's totally beholden to that. So it's captive of the civilian government, which is itself captive of this private paramilitary financialist blob, right? That is what the IRGC has become. I think is that a good explainer how deep we can leave it? Here's a little bit from the Middle East Institute that explains kind of the ownership and goes into detail of the IRGC and its front companies, or just fully owned subsidiaries that operate in the economy. Yep.